Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you, Senator Lankford, for joining us today. We are thrilled and honored that you've carved out some of your very busy day to spend with the Norman Chamber of Commerce. So we appreciate that very much. And I wanted to give you a quick update, Senator, on our perception of things in Norman, just so you kind of get an idea of what we're doing through the Chamber of Commerce. Once the crisis hit, the Chamber, like many other businesses, we followed the order of our mayor and our governor, and we began to work remotely. But that actually only kind of ramped up our activity. We have been working overtime trying to support our members in so many different ways, not only being a conduit of information in regards to all of the relief packages that you've been sending to local businesses from the federal government, but also trying to help coordinate activities for ways we can locally support our businesses. And we've been trying to be creative through that by people shopping remotely online or drive-through, curbside pickup. We've done some different business bingo. We've even we partnered with our hospital foundation to help coordinate the collection of personal protective equipment with our county government and also the hospital foundation. Through Visit Norman, who's on the line on this call today, we put together a Facebook group called Together for Norman Biz. It has over 1,000 people in the group over really a quick amount of time who share the exciting things they're doing with their businesses and gives individuals an opportunity to connect with those. And then we continue to partner with so many different groups and entities throughout our community to just work on relief. And probably the most exciting thing this week has been the ramped up discussion about what it looks like when we're through the crisis and how we begin to fully reopen the economy. No doubt that will be in phases, but we're excited about that opportunity. Our businesses continue to step up in spite of the challenging times. I'm sure you're probably aware of Emmy. They're a locally grown and owned family business who is processing tests. They're working with our hospital and other healthcare providers to locally process COVID-19 tests, which is very exciting. If you haven't toured them, I hope that you're able to do that someday because they're a very exciting company all the time, but particularly right now, they're lending out in this global pandemic. But I'll stop there, Senator, and kick it to you. We're anxious to get an update from you, kind of where we've been and where we're going. And I know that our group here has some questions, so we'll look forward to trying to engage the rest of the people on the call. But for now, Senator, thank you for joining us, and thank you for providing the leadership you do on a regular basis through this crisis, but just in general too. So there you go.
Scott, thanks very much. Appreciate everybody being on the call connection right now. We'll talk through some specific issues, but let me make a couple of brief comments, and then I want to jump into this to give you just some updates. I think everybody on this call knows that. Get a hold of Brooks Wright. Brooks is the point person for the whole central Oklahoma area. You're going to see him at lots of meetings. Most everybody there in the chamber is going to know him. He is passionate about what he's doing and is exceptionally sharp. And so as you have questions and issues about things, don't hesitate to be able to reach out to Brooks. All of us right now are trying to get as many answers to as many questions as we can possibly get. And so we have some people hesitating to say, I know you're overwhelmed, but we're responding to all those people. This is what we do. This is how we're trying to be able to help. This is why we're around. So don't hesitate to be able to reach out to Brooks in any way that we can possibly help with any federal issue, no matter what the question or the issue is. He'll be able to process through and to be able to figure out who gets it next and where do we go from there. So keep reaching out to him, as I know you have already. Quick federal update on a couple of different things. One of them is that the checks for $1,200 Those direct deposits started going out today. We have millions of folks that have received it already across the country, and they're being processed as fast as they can. Their first focus was on those with direct deposit relationships already, had 2018 direct deposit for their taxes, or their taxes 2019, and then those that are senior adults that are on Social Security or on disability. We're also working to make sure that folks on VA disability are also getting those same benefits, and we continue to be able to expand out that direction with the Treasury. They've been very responsive to it and exceptionally fast in getting some of these things turned around. The checks are what will more likely be debit cards for some, checks for others, just depending on how they have good addresses and such. Those will start going out probably next week. That takes a little bit longer. Their first focus was getting dollars out the door with direct deposit, but you'll see those going out. It is an ironic thing that on April 15th, we're not talking about filing taxes. We're talking about the IRS sending us money. That's an entirely different shift, and shows you just one more case of how different these days are. For the Paycheck Protection Program, which we've had over 1 million businesses that have already taken advantage of, over $250 billion have already gone out the door. The spend rate that's happening right now from multiple folks, including some bankers on this call right now that are filling out paperwork as we're going through it. We may be at the end of this week and get to the end of those dollars. We're trying to get to an agreement to be able to extend it. The Senate and the House are currently not scheduled to be back in session until May the 4th. Lots of reasons for that. One of them is Washington, D.C. is currently one of the COVID-19 hotspots in the country. It's New York City, it's Washington, D.C., it's Detroit, it's Los Angeles, New Orleans. So there's these different spots all around the country where we have a higher propensity. D.C. is one of those spots. So we're going to have as limited a contact as possible. And obviously, we've got lots of folks in the House and the Senate that are in their 70s and 80s. They're a little more vulnerable in that, and they're more vulnerable population. Saying that, we're trying to be able to move some things by unanimous consent or by voice votes, and those have to be things there's wide agreement to. There's wide agreement to be able to extend the Paycheck Protection Program. Some of my colleagues that are there in the Senate want to be able to add a bunch of additional programs to it as well. We're trying to say, let's do the minimum amount that we can. This is a program we all agree to, not add things that splits everyone that has to be able to come for a vote. They might be able to pass on a vote, but we can't move it right now. So we're trying to be able to work through that process. Tomorrow will be what's called a pro forma session in the Senate. That is a limited number of people that will actually be there. There'll be someone in the chair taking business, but it is an opportunity to be able to come and to be able to pass something in a unanimous consent request and to be able to get it done. And the target is to extend the Paycheck Protection Program tomorrow, if at all possible, if that gets through. So still lots of behind the scenes conversations that are happening right now on it as well. Those are two big items on it. There's also a real push, obviously, for testing, but testing, as you mentioned with Emmy before, is really twofold now. So you're going to have to track this testing conversation, because initially is, can we get a test at all? And we all knew the test would be taken, and you get the results back 2 or 3 or 4 days later. That's still true with some of the testing now, and we have tens of thousands of tests in Oklahoma, but there's a new push now for 2 different types. One is a faster test. Almost every hospital and doctor's office in Oklahoma has access to the Abbott Labs testing capability. If you have a strep and you want to go get a rapid strep test, that's typically the type of equipment they would use, something like this. There's a 15-minute test that's coming out from Abbott Labs. That would be a very rapid turnaround, but they can produce 50,000 of those a day. So if you start doing the math of 50,000 of those a day times 300 and some odd million people in the country, they're trying to get them out as fast as they possibly can so they can get faster testing. So there's the slower testing, there's the faster testing that's coming, and one more piece that Emmy is working on and multiple other labs are working on, and that's an antibody test. And that is the ability to be able to find out, have you already had the virus? And so most likely you're immune. That will be the new conversation that will come this summer, and will be somewhat a game changer for us to be able to find out the number of people that had the virus, thought it was a cold, thought it was allergies, thought it was the flu, but really it was COVID-19. Their body fought it off. They didn't end up being hospitalized like so many others. And now they're immune to it. That allows them to go back to work, allows them to do face-to-face work. They're not worried about spreading it to someone else nor getting it again. So that test will come on in bulk this summer. And there'll be a rapid distribution of that test nationwide to be able to get that out there so people can know, am I immune to this already? And then the next step is, if I'm sick, is it COVID-19? The next big issue is for the summer. Every other coronavirus has had the same kind of rise and fall as influenza does. Influenza falls off, as we know, in the summertime. Previous coronaviruses like SARS and MERS also had that same rise and fall. When you got to the summertime, it didn't survive the summer heat. So we are hopeful, though we don't know, because this is called the novel coronavirus for a reason. It's new. We don't know a lot about it. We're still tracking that on the science side. But we're hopeful by the time we get to June and July that we see a rapid decline in the virus itself. And so we're not seeing the same kind of spread. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't come back later in the year. That also means it doesn't move to the southern hemisphere and ravage the southern hemisphere like it has the northern hemisphere for the last couple of months. We'll just have to see. But we're all trying to accelerate through that. And that gets to the big issue of how do we reopen? That is one of the hardest issues. It's actually something I raised to people at the very beginning of this. It's much easier to close down an economy than it is to reopen in this situation. Because when you reopen, you have to point to something and say, we're reopening because, and filling in the blank of what is that because? Is it because you've got fewer hospitalizations? Is it because you have less spread? What's the because there? So here's what we're targeting at this point as the key aspects. One is increased testing. If you have the antibody testing, you have the ability to be able to test faster, whether you have it or don't have it. That allows people to go back to work, and it allows people that don't feel good to get testing faster, get results faster, having to do less tracing on it. That's number one. Number two is if you have some kind of treatment options. We're not scared of the flu each year, though the flu kills more people than COVID-19 will this year in all likelihood. We're not scared of the flu each year as a culture because we have testing, we have treatment, and we have vaccines. We have testing on board that's coming on board now. We have some treatment options that are out there, but are not complete yet with the clinicals. And we have 3 different human trials right now on a vaccine. That vaccine won't be ready though until December, January at the earliest, because it's got to go through full human trials at this point. In the meantime, if we get a decline in the summer, as is typical in this type of virus, if we have increased testing and we have diminished hospitalizations, the hope is that is enough to start reopening the government. I fully expect it'll be the southern part of the United States will open up earlier than the northern part of the United States. Texas is already talking about their stages of reopening because they have dramatically fewer cases per capita than what we have even in Oklahoma or in Nebraska or in North South Dakota. Some of the reasons for that is warmer climate. Obviously, they have less spread of a virus like in a warmer climate. So there's already some conversation about what will that look like in different parts of the country, and will it move faster in some parts than it does in others? In all likelihood, yes, but that would still limit travel north to south. As Oklahomans, we typically keep New Yorkers out of our state anyway, but this becomes an even bigger issue when you've got folks that are traveling from hotspots coming into the state and the reinfection rates and what that might look like. So travel state to state may still be limited, but states may open up more. And we'll just have to see how that moves. And again, we're all looking forward to the day our climate's a little warmer. We're a little sick of the extra bonus winter we've just gotten in the last week. But it does make a big difference to get warmer and to see how this changes the trajectory of the virus itself. Let me open this up, Scott, because I know y'all got lots of practical questions, but I want to give you some of the context of some of the things we're looking at right now.
Okay, Senator, thank you for that. And again, if you have a question, just hit that raise your hand button, and I'll get to those. But in the meantime, as people start doing that, let me ask you a question, Senator. You mentioned additional money for PPP. First, thank you for what's there, because it is making a huge impact. I think I read today, maybe it was even a tweet that you sent out earlier this morning, that that Oklahoma ranked 16th, I think, in the country in the amount that has been distributed, which I think is just fantastic.
Yeah, we were very aggressive early on to be able to get the word out, and our office really engaged with our bankers to make sure they were ready as much as we could be with small businesses, with nonprofits. Yeah, we're very high for the amount of money that's coming in. I think it's because our people were more informed and our bankers were ready for it as much as you could possibly be. With all the rules still coming out on it, but we wanted to be able to make sure people did not miss this, knowing it's a first come, first served in the first round, and there is no guarantee of a second round.
Absolutely. So one of the other significant programs out there is the disaster loans, the EIDL loans. It's my understanding that the amount that's being distributed on those has been significantly reduced per amount of loan just because of the need or demand. Is there discussion about adding additional dollars to that aspect through that part of the SBA funding?
There is. So let me give you some perspective on this and the challenge that we face. Where the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP loans going out, those go to every bank across the entire country. So there were lots of spots to be able to access it. So it would move much faster. The EIDL all has to come through SBA in their website. So there is a narrow part of the funnel there, and it is much slower. Where the Paycheck Protection Program, you may apply, get approved today, and get the cash tomorrow. The EIDL, we've got several folks that have been 3 weeks, 4 weeks already in the process and don't have money yet. So it's a much slower process because of that bottleneck. So the first preference is get more into the paycheck protection because it gets out to people faster. The EIDL is important to us. They have more flexibility with what they can use those dollars for, but it's harder to be able to actually get out the door. So we'll see where that goes in the days ahead. But I would tell you most of the focus is on paycheck protection.
Okay. Our first question is from Dan Shim, who is the CEO of our local Convention and Visitors Bureau, Visit Norman. Dan, go ahead.
Hi. Thanks, Scott, and thank you, Senator Lankford, for being with us. And I want to reiterate what Scott and Mike have said about the PPP program and the help that that's given all of our small businesses. I think we've seen this really hit the travel industry maybe harder than anybody else. Our hotels are either sitting closed or at single-digit occupancy. Our attractions that usually have thousands of people in them are sitting closed. So tourism is the third largest industry in the state, and it's promoted by destination marketing organizations across Oklahoma and the nation that provide a vital role in economic impact for all of our communities. Right now, we're funded with a guest tax with no visitors coming in. We're looking at a 80 to 95% decrease in funding and revenue over the next 3 to 6 months. So it's a huge impact. And because we're a 501c6 organization, most of us across the country, our chambers are set up that way. We were not included in the PPP eligibility. Is there talk about including 501c6s in the next phase?
Answer your short question long, yes, there absolutely is talk on that. It's one of the things that I brought up numerous times on it because this is a jobs program and a way to be able to help protect employment. The goal was to keep people from going to unemployment, to keep them connected to their same place. There's no reason 501c6 organizations shouldn't be included in that. I made that argument before the bill was done. I obviously lost that argument. I've made that argument multiple times since the bill has passed to say if we get an opportunity to be able to fix some of the issues in this bill, that would be one of them I'd recommend we fix. In fact, I've asked to say, can we get unanimous consent on this? I would assume every single member is getting contacts from organizations just like yours saying, why can't this be the same as it is for members as for membership organizations? So yes, I had a conversation as recently as yesterday with McConnell on this again, on the C6 organizations.
That's great. And just
Thank you.
I think there's probably representative of over 10 employees that would be impacted by that decision. So we would greatly appreciate that kind of assistance. What about the next phase? Dan mentioned, phase 4. I've even heard talk about a phase 5. What could be? What's the discussion about what could potentially be in those kinds of programs? I've heard infrastructure. Is that bandied about, or what do you foresee?
So let me give you a couple of thoughts on that. One is we need to do an infrastructure bill regardless. Some people are saying we'll include that in a phase 4 or phase 5 bill. I would rather not. We need to do an infrastructure bill, and that needs to be fixed anyway long term. We're already due. That was set to come up by September. So let's do the infrastructure bill, but no, let's not call it stimulus. Let's not call it something else. Let's call it the infrastructure because we've got to be able to pay for it. We've got to be able to sustain that as we normally do. So set that aside. A lot of the other conversation about phase 4 is about, okay, we just spent $2 trillion. Let's double it. Let's do it all over again. I've tried to say time out. Most of the money has not even got out the door yet. So for instance, states and municipalities will receive $150 billion. None of that money has gone out to states and municipalities yet. That will be released the 24th of April. The rules of even what that would even apply to aren't even out until the end of this week. The initial $1,200 that are coming out to taxpayers, that comes out today and in the days ahead on it. So allow that to go out the door. The idle funding is still out there, but they're trying to get that money out the door. So before we talk about a fourth bill, we ought to see the result of the third one and to see what actually occurred and what needs to be fixed. You brought up things like the C6 organizations. That's something that needs to be fixed. So that would be a good thing for a fourth bill to be able to come up to fix part of the third bill on it. Community foundations were another one. Not-for-profit organizations are eligible for the Triple P program, but if you're connected to a community foundation, you're not. Well, that's foolish. We need to be able to fix that. That's something else that needs to be fixed in the process. There was assistance to individuals to pay their rent, but we have a lot of places that or companies that are saying, hey, I'm just going to go out. I can't do this anymore. And they're exposing a lot of real estate nationwide on it. We've got to be able to figure out how to be able to maintain some semblance of organization in our real estate market as well. And we all know what happens when a real estate market crashes, commercial or residential. That was not engaged in the third bill. We've got to be able to address some of those things. So my preference would be for a fourth bill. It's about fixing what was missed in the third, not just saying, gosh, that was so much fun spending $2 trillion. Let's have that same ride all over again and spend a whole bunch of money again. Because just like during a normal storm, when you're going through a storm, you often have to take out a short-term loan to be able to figure out how to get through this, get repaired. But on the other side of it, when you take out that loan, you know, I've got to pay this back. And my fear is there's some people in DC that don't have in the back of their mind, hey, let's pay this back as well. They just want to be able to spend with the assumption we never pay it back. That's not true. We do have to pay the bondholders, and we got to be able to figure out how to be able to manage this.
Gotcha. Okay. Anybody else have another question? You can raise your hand, or we have a small group, so if you want to chime in, you can do that.
I don't know how to raise my hand, Scott.
You're good.
Can I go ahead and ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Senator, one of the things that we've seen advertised is that some of the automobile insurers are giving away $2 billion back in premiums to policyholders because I guess they're not driving their automobiles as much. In Oklahoma and Colorado, where I have businesses in Norman, we're under a stay-at-home order where I cannot open my showrooms, nor in Colorado can I open my showrooms for the sale of automobiles. I'm still allowed to do online sales. So I contacted my insurance broker and I asked if there would be any consideration, because the amount of risk that they predicate your premiums on is test driving cars and employees driving cars and such. Since we're shut down essentially, and you're not allowed to test drive automobiles at 3 of my locations in Norman and 1 in Denver, Colorado, they're not talking about any consideration or refunds or discounts for that reason. Has anybody brought this up by chance?
Mike, they have not brought it up to me on that. That's an interesting thought. Obviously, the companies that are out there, farmers, multiple others that are saying to policyholders, hey, we're going to reduce your rates by 25% or whatever it may be. That's a voluntary issue that's not been mandatory, but it is something that hopefully is contagious in the industry for them to be able to say, okay, if this company is doing it, another company is going to do it. I've not heard anyone do that on the commercial side yet. I've seen it numerous times, though, on the residential side. This is, by the way, the same thing that we're seeing in the credit card companies. The credit card companies are not advertising that they will actually let you skip a month or skip 2 months. But when I talk to the credit card companies and say, what are you doing with consumers when they call? Their answer is, when they call, we're letting them skip a month or two, but we're not advertising it because we're terrified of what that'll mean as far as the rush, and we need cash flow as well. So I would say hopefully there's some peer pressure on that, but there's not been a piece of legislation that's been proposed to actually raise that and to force industry to be able to reduce their rates like that.
Okay. And then you mentioned on the infrastructure, there was at one time talk of $1 trillion of infrastructure. I think Trump had brought that up. President Trump had brought that up a long time ago. But nobody's ever really addressed the fact that automobiles are way more fuel efficient now than what they've ever been. And the federal tax revenues that are generated from electrification and natural gas automobiles and such, and carpooling and all these other things that are going on. The general fund, I believe, at one time, what I knew about it, it was subsidizing the transportation fund, $120 billion. And it seems like every time we talk to anybody about, is there a way to make that work so that people driving on the roads would have to pay for that? Everybody sees that as some type of a tax increase, and it needs some type of reform, it would seem to me.
No, I would completely agree on it, Mike. And my push is to tell people, hey, this is not free. This is a user fee, and it always has been. That the gas tax is set to be able to, those individuals that drive on the road more will actually pay more for that road because they're driving more. Diesel trucks pay more because they do more damage to the road than a passenger vehicle does. And so they have a higher cost because they have a higher fee. For those that are on CNG, compressed natural gas, or those with electric vehicles, they're basically driving the road for free. Other people are paying for it. There is no requirement of them to be able to pay. We've got to be able to fix that so everybody does it. The last time there was a change in the gas tax was in 1994. And so as costs have continued to go up, then we have not had a change in the gas tax at all in a very long time. It's a little over 18 cents a gallon for the federal gas tax piece. We do have to solve that. President Trump has talked about a $2 trillion infrastructure issue. To give you a picture of what that would really mean, if we raise the gas tax 25 cents a gallon, which I can't imagine a gas tax increase that big. If we raise the gas tax 25 cents a gallon, that would raise $500 billion over 10 years. So a $2 trillion infrastructure package is an enormous package that would be exceptionally difficult to be able to pay for. If we raised the gas tax even 25 cents a gallon, it would just about offset what we have to move from the general revenue into the infrastructure, the highway fee. So we have to address this, but we're going to have to be more creative. More users are going to have to pay that are getting it for free. They're going to have to get engaged. We are going to have to fix the gas tax eventually to be able to resolve this. And we've got to be able to figure out what works, what's actual infrastructure, what's non-infrastructure that's built into that gas tax fee right now. But it's important. A lot of people are around it. There's a bill that's coming over. I serve on the finance committee. There's an infrastructure bill that's come to us that we're now trying to figure out how to be able to pay for.
Has anybody looked at the percentage of vehicles on the road that are not currently paying anything because they're EV or natural gas or something of that nature there? Because from what you're saying, 25% increase on every vehicle on the road wouldn't bring in $1 trillion over 10 years from what you're saying.
Yep. So yeah, we're well over 1 million into the 2 million range of vehicles that pay nothing to be able to drive right now. We need those folks to be able to engage as well. And it's not a huge amount. Even we're talking, if you're an electric vehicle, if you paid $100 or $150 a year, that would be equated to what someone who drives a gasoline vehicle also pays. This is about those 4 tires hitting the road, that weight of your vehicle. This is not about the fuel that actually powers it. This is what they're driving on.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because we're going to want to get the economy going as quickly as possible after all of this, and a transportation bill would be a good way to help revive the economy over the next several months. So
I would agree, only that President Obama found out the term shovel-ready jobs doesn't really mean shovel-ready. A lot of those projects just getting out the door take a while to get out the door. So economic activity, just reopening businesses and re-engaging, no one really knows what's going to happen, if people are going to return to restaurants or if people are going to say, hey, I'm going to cook at home more. No one really knows. We all have this pent-up energy to say, I want to be able to go out to a restaurant and be able to sit with my family and do that. Is that maintained? Do people shop the same way? Do people get even more comfortable shopping online and they do less retail shopping? No one really knows anymore, other than to say we're spending a month changing our habits. It's pretty significant to be able to see. People will still drive, but we got to be able to manage this.
Thank you.
all I can tell you is that my wife and her friends and our other friends are anxious to get back to the restaurants, and the wives are anxious to get back to shopping, so they'll do their part to get the economy going.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. And Senator, as you know, the Norman Chamber of Commerce for years now has been very supportive of a, well, former and future infrastructure plan. So we definitely want to, we'll be supporting you and others like you who want to come up with solutions in that regard. Our next question is from our hospital administrator, Richie Splitt. Richie, go ahead.
Hi, Senator. Thank you again for your time, and thanks for your leadership and throughout this entire pandemic. And it's very much appreciated. It's noted, and we're very proud of the work that you're doing. My question, and I want to thank you again for the time we had together, some hospital CEOs, to share with you our thoughts and concerns. I just want to give you a perspective on the CARES Act. And at the time, we all thanked you for your support of that and want to continue to say thank you. And I want to use this opportunity to tell you why possibly a 4.0 would be necessary for hospitals and their solvency. So CMS released $30 billion to hospitals to help in this crisis time. For Norman Regional, we did receive our check, and that was about $10 million that came to us. And I want to, so again, very much appreciated. For the month of March, about half of March, we postponed those elective surgeries. We've seen a significant drop in our volumes. ER is down, inpatient is down, COVID visits are down. And our financial close is indicating we're somewhere between $8 and $9 million loss for March, and that was only half of the impact of COVID. So if you take that to April, where we expect a full impact for April, that loss could be 17 million plus. And so that $10 million, while it's helpful, there is still that big gap. So I just wanted to use the opportunity to mention and give you some perspective in terms of, one, how much we appreciate the CARES Act and what's being done for healthcare, but there seems to be a lot of opportunity still for all the hospitals.
Okay, that's helpful to be able to get. Obviously, that 30 million was the first 30 million of billion, first 30 billion of a $100 billion distribution into those that handle Medicare, Medicaid, both suppliers and providers. So there will obviously be additional dollars. The challenge that I've had in talking with some of the other hospital administrators is I wish I could give you a predictable amount that will come to say that will be the same in April or that will be at the same time period, because CMS is working through the process right now for hospitals that were missed. As you know well, the first distribution was based on your Medicare and how much Medicare that you use. That was going to leave out things like Children's Hospital, because Children's Hospital has very little Medicare in its hospital, and so it got almost nothing. For nursing homes, they got nothing because most of those are Medicaid for the care in nursing homes, and there's obviously extremely high risks and costs that are there as well. So there's a little bit of a shift that's happening in the second part of this distribution, dealing with rural hospitals, dealing with hospitals that are Medicaid driven, or dealing with facilities that don't have that same exposure. But then I would expect in the next round of that to be another amount that'll come out to Medicare related hospitals. We're trying to be able to track what the timing is. CMS is trying to be able to get as equitable a system as they can out right now, but they have literally tens of thousands of hard decisions in the process as they go through this. But your point's well taken.
And I and hospitals around the state of Oklahoma agree with that. So again, thank you for your leadership and your help.
No, thanks. Glad to be able to be a part of the solution on this. Thanks for what y'all are doing.
Okay, our next question comes from one of our local bankers, and he's very busy, as we heard earlier, processing SBA requests. This is Joshua Hinkle.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to virtually see all of you. And Senator Lankford, thank you for your time. I wanted to ask about the process of getting personal protective equipment to the states for our medical staff, if you have any information about that.
So as far as how they get it or the amount that we have?
Both.
So I would get with the Office of Emergency Management for the how, and they're working this through their office because some of that's coming in through FEMA nationally and through the national stockpile. We have tens of thousands of gowns and gloves and protective equipment now, much more than what we had before. We have more ventilators in storage now than what we're using across the state by far. So some of those devices that were very difficult and some of the PPE that was difficult to get 2 weeks ago are now hard to get rather than impossible to get. But it's still not readily available, and the prices still haven't come down the open market. Our whole system is built on hospitals, clinics, doctor's office, dentist's office, all having their own PPE there and having a small stockpile. But they also all assumed that, hey, if I need more, I can contact my supplier, and within 24 hours, it'll be just shipped to me. Well, that doesn't work when literally everyone in the globe is trying to get it. So that's caused this backup to the state stockpile and to the federal stockpile. Everything in the federal stockpile has been distributed to the states. So our full allotment, and they're trying to be able to issue that out based on needs and to be able to give entities as much need as they can, with them still holding. So there'll be a particular community, Lawton, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Enid, wherever it may be, where we may have a hotspot rise. But I know it's a long answer, but Office of Emergency Management will be the key spot. Let me do this. Brooks can follow up with you, and we'll make sure that we connect the dots and make sure you're actually getting to the right person on it.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator, our time is running short. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap up our conversation today?
I would only say stay in contact with Brooks. As you have questions and thoughts or ideas on this, please don't assume everything's been fully thought through. You were probably dealing with an issue that may be unique to you, but probably not unique to others. So keep reaching out to Brooks and make sure we get those different thoughts. Your special case may actually be a case that millions of others are dealing with right now. Let us help go chase it and solve it for you and for a lot of other people, and then share ideas with us. We get lots of folks sharing ideas. Some of those ideas, I think we could never, ever get that done. And some of those ideas, I think, yeah, that's a great idea that I think we could get done. We won't know the difference until we start trying to filter it all together. So keep sharing that with us. And we can't lose hope in the middle of all this. And that's the grand challenge, is a lot of people are going to bed wondering about next and when do we open and how do we do this. We're going to keep pressing to be able to get our economy back open. But right now we're praying through this. We're praying through options for testing and for treatment and for vaccines. And we're praying through wisdom and, quite frankly, looking forward to warmer days and hoping that helps us get on top of this as well.
Very good. Those are encouraging words as we wrap up this conversation today. And Senator, thank you again for your time, your leadership throughout this crisis. It's evident and very much appreciated from your friends in Norman. Everything you're doing is directly benefiting our businesses here. And so on behalf of them, we can't say thank you enough. I appreciate everybody that was on this call today, and we look forward to connecting again very soon. Everybody take care and be healthy.